Pitch battle starts with the role Britain played through Cecil John Rhodes in setting up apartheid, treating the indigenous people as second-class citizens. The topic still rages on today with the Black Lives Matter movement.
In pitch battles, Peter, Hain and I try to explain the making of the sports system in South Africa, from colonialism in the 1800s to the coronavirus in 2020. And it actually ends in a very relevant moment at the time of the pandemic and also the Black Lives Matter. And in a strange coincidence, what we've tried to do in the book is show how the systemic nature of racism evolved in South Africa and naturally in South African sport. So it's important for us that we deal with those issues. Hopefully after pitch battles no one can say they didn't know, and the kind of denialism that we still see in confronting the past in South Africa, hopefully this will help people to understand the kind of realities that need to be acknowledged before we can really move on in a unified way and using sport as a genuine nation building thing rather than an issue that divides us regularly, as we see even now. 2 years ago we were having a meal together, and I suggested it's 50 years coming up to those path-breaking demonstrations in 69-70 against the whites-only Springbok rugby teams that changed the face of South African sport. Up until then, people got away with key politics out of sport. Some demonstrations at the cricket matches and rugby matches were politely ignored and put up with, but once the guys ran onto the pitches, started chaining themselves to rugby posts and harassing that team in 24 out of 25 matches, it changed the entire international perception of apartheid in sport. And that also gave strength to the internal resistance movement in South Africa. After the 60s, SANROC and SASA, the early sports organizations for non-racial sport, were banned, and then SACOS emerged in 73 again as part of renewed resistance, including the trade union movement, the Soweto uprisings and so on, and became very powerful inside the country, representing the people who were excluded under apartheid sport.
Conquerors always get to write the history. Pitch battles attempts to set the record straight. With all the racism and discrimination, black sports people still managed amazing achievements, even though past regimes have tried to obliterate that history.
But most importantly for us is also to write back into history the people in the past who were not included in it, completely obliterated from history. Like the apartheid school textbooks, black sports people were totally left out, and there are amazing stories. Going back to the first soccer tour from South Africa to Britain in 1899 by a team of African footballers from Bloemfontein led by Joseph Twai, who toured Britain and, believe it or not, played against teams like Liverpool, Arsenal and Newcastle United. And the story just goes on and on from there. How black South Africans envisage an inclusive future for sport, and despite the restrictions, despite the systemic exclusions and the 300 apartheid laws that control your movement, where you stayed, where you were born, where you died, where you went to school, which hospital you could go to, they persisted in their love for sport, and that comes through in this book, so that none of us can deny the exclusions that happened. And once we do that, once there's that recognition, we can actually start building the future.
There were many brave people who fought a powerful and inhumane system, some of them paying the ultimate price. The aim of the book is for people often forgotten to be remembered for their courage and the role they played. The role Dennis Brutus, who was shot and then tortured on Robben Island, John Harris, who was hanged, and many others.
People like Dennis Brutus, on his way to the IOC, the Olympic Committee meeting in Germany, he was caught at the Mozambique border, brought back to the Fort prison in Joburg, and shot while trying to escape, and then sent to Robben Island, where he was specifically tortured because he was a poet and he tried to keep South Africa out of, isolate South African apartheid sport. And he was terribly treated on Robben Island. John Harris, his friend, took over from him as president of SANROC, and after the Rivonia arrests, in a desperate attempt to draw attention to where South Africa was going, planted a bomb on Johannesburg station, and which led to a death, although he'd given a warning, but was hanged. And the drama of that hanging is told in the story. People like Hassan Hauer, Frankie van der Horst and others in the 70s and 80s are things that young people today, I think, would be interested in if they knew about it.
Another aim of the book is for South Africans to move forward to a better future, but they have to acknowledge the past and stop the denialism.
For me as a white South African, to say that white South Africans need to own up, and just a mere acknowledgement. Gary Player pretends, or has sort of reinvented himself as one of the discoverers of one of the heroes of the new democratic order, but it was him who said in 1966, at the very time he got his first Grand Slam in golf, I am South African, and I must say now and clearly that I am of the South Africa verwoerd and apartheid. In a virtual treatise on racist paternalism, he said, this country is the product of its instinct and ability to maintain civilized standards among the alien barbarian, because to have abandoned them would have meant its disappearance. And he says, a good deal of nonsense is talked of and indeed thought about segregation. We in South Africa believe our races should develop separately but in parallel. And all it takes for a basic fundamental dishonesty to go away is for Gary Player to say one word, sorry, I did think that at some time. Instead of that, denialism. So we need to get to the mindsets so that our young people, our new generations, can get on being South Africans on as level playing fields as possible. And that can only happen if we acknowledge the past.
It's hoped this book will help unify South Africans. Craig Murray, SABC News, Cape Town.